Killian Hayes entered the NBA with hype and expectations. He was the 7th overall pick in 2020 by the Detroit Pistons, and many thought he was a top 3 prospect in that class. Some even believing he was the best prospect in that class over guys like Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball. However, he hasn't lived up to his billing in the NBA so far, and with guards drafted after him like Haliburton, Maxey, and Desmond Bane being significantly better players, it's led a lot of people to question why the Pistons took him top 7. But it's not as simple as he sucks and isn't a good NBA player. There is a reason the Pistons took him so high and why many viewed him highly as a prospect. And there's also a reason why he hasn't worked out in the NBA so far, which is what I want to talk about in this video. But quickly before we go any further, if you're new and like basketball, I would really appreciate if you would like, subscribe, hit notification bell, I'm notified whenever I release a video. I make videos about basketball all the time, and liking and subscribing are the 2 best ways you can help me out in the YouTube algorithm and help me reach my goal of 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Let's try and get 100 likes on this video so YouTube will recommend it to others. Anyways, let's talk about Killian Hayes. So I want to make it very clear, I don't think it's impossible for Hayes to turn it around. He's still only 22 years old, and in fact he just turned 22, and he does have some positive indicators on tape. Killian Hayes is a very good passing playmaker. He has great intangibles as a passer. He's high feel, good handle, great vision, good accuracy as a passer. He has good creativity. Passing has been the one offensive skill that I believe has translated for Hayes since entering the NBA. He has averaged 5.3 assists per game for his career. He averaged a career high 6.2 assists per game this past season. While the rest of his offense is kind of a mess, to put it nicely, his passing playmaking is legit NBA caliber. And while playmaking is about more than just passing ability, if we're talking about pure ability as a passer, not factoring in how your scoring opens up opportunities for other teammates on top of passing, but strictly what you can do as a passer in terms of intangibles, he ranks higher in the league than you would think. And while he wasn't good this past season by any means, I do think his season was better than people think it was. And when I watched the tape, I was a bit surprised by how much more optimistic I was about his potential to last in the NBA after watching the tape, because I had very low expectations going in. He averaged a career high 10.3 points per game to go along with his career high assist production. He played his most games in the season at 76, and he had flashes of what people saw in him as a prospect. He scored 20 or more points 8 times. He had 22 games where he scored at least 15 points, including the 8 where he scored at least 20. He had 6 double-doubles as well, all of them points and assist double-doubles. And when I watched the tape, there were plenty of flashes of that guy I saw prior to the NBA. Somebody that made me believe in him as a top 5 prospect. I had him in the top 5 on my board. I wasn't quite as high as others were, but I still was high on him. I believe he was number 4 or 5 on my board. It was either him or Maxey in some order at that 4 or 5. I'm pretty sure it was Maxey at 4 and Hayes at 5, but still, I was very high on him. So while he didn't have a good season, he did show the flashes of that player I saw on tape overseas prior to the NBA that made me believe in him as a potential high-level starting point guard before that 2020 NBA draft. However, while he has shown flashes of that guy that I saw prior to the NBA, the prospect that I believed could be a high-level starter to borderline all-star caliber player, he also showed a lot on tape why it hasn't worked out for him in the NBA. Because outside of those flashes I saw in moments and his ability as a passer and defender, it really is a mess for him on tape. He is not efficient at all. That's putting it nicely. 37.6% from the field overall for his career. 27.4% from 3 for his career, 43.2% from 2 for his career, 42.4 effective field goal percentage for his career, 45.2 true shooting percentage for his career, and he's below 40% from every shooting distance outside of 3 feet for his career. And even his 3 feet in field goal percentage isn't great. I know it's at 64.4%, but considering only 11.1% of his attempts are within that distance, it isn't ideal. Him not being a good scorer or an effective scorer at all is a problem because he's a point guard and he went 7th overall. When you're a point guard that goes top 7 in the draft, the team expects you to be a really good player. And to be a really good point guard, you have to be able to score. You gotta be able to shoot. You gotta be able to be a guy that gets to the rim if you're not a great shooter. Or at the very least, have the confidence to take jumpers. Because if you have the confidence, you can fix a lot of things. The NBA is great at fixing forms. And Hayes has done none of those things at all. I will say that his 80.3 free throw percentage for his career is encouraging in my opinion, because while the fact it's on low volume is a problem in terms of his ability to drive and drop contact, the fact that he's a pretty good free throw shooter on a volume where even a few misses could wildly change the efficiency numbers is a sign that he does have shooting touch. But regardless, I don't think he has great mechanics. I don't think he's consistently confident. His confidence is inconsistent at the very best. And I wouldn't say that there are any signs of him developing into a great shooter or a great scorer. So Killian Hayes isn't a good scorer. But why isn't he a good scorer? Well, I think the context behind it is important. Hayes was averaging 4.6 points per game and 3.6 assists per game on 27.7, 25-50 splits through the first 7 games of his rookie season. Not good at all by any stretch of the imagination, but he was a teenager who just turned 19 and he was making an adjustment to playing in the best league in the world, at a position where the transition is the toughest to make. His fellow 2020 draft mate LaMelo Ball averaged 11.6 points per game and 4.9 assists per game on 39.7, 35.5, 70.6 splits in his first 7 games. Stephen Curry averaged 8.7 points per game and 5.4 assists per game in his first 7 games as a rookie. Darius Garland, a guy that I think has legit All-NBA borderline MVP type upside, averaged 7.6 points per game and 3.3 assists per game on 29.2, 25.9, 66.7 splits in his first 7 games as a rookie. So it isn't uncommon to see point guards struggle early on as rookies. In the context of Hayes entering the NBA under the most difficult circumstances in recent memory is important. He had a short turnaround from the draft to the start of the season, no summer league, and barely any time to prepare for the transition to the NBA, especially compared to rookies prior to and after Killian Hayes and the rest of the 2020 draft entered the league. So it does make sense that he struggled early on. And I think it was acceptable for him to struggle early on because, he's a point guard. It's a tough transition. However, in his 7th NBA game, he suffered a hip injury, which we later found out was a labral tear. For context, this is the same injury that Isaiah Thomas suffered at the end of his Boston tenure. It's an injury that really changes your athleticism long term. Isaiah Thomas never had the same explosive athleticism and burst that made him one of the best small guards ever after that injury. And that's why, really, since leaving Boston, he kind of has faded out of the league quickly. And it clearly has affected Killian Hayes as well. He's not the same athlete he was prior to this injury. And even before the injury, it wasn't like he was this freak athlete. He was a good athlete, but not a great one. His first step isn't what it was because he couldn't move the way he once did. And he still can't move the way he once did. it has taken a major shot to his confidence. It has made him way less aggressive, because aggressive was a big part of why you were so intrigued by him, because you really didn't see European point guards this young outside of Luka that were this aggressive as a scorer when they were prospects. I truly believe that Killian Hayes was worth a top 5 to 7 pick as a prospect. I've gone back and watched the tape, and I still stand firm in my belief in where I had him ranked as a prospect in that draft. But injuries have had a major effect on why he hasn't translated to the NBA. If you watch his prospect tape overseas and post-hip injury tape side by side, it's like watching two completely different players, and I think this injury is the biggest reason why he hasn't lived up to the expectations. So Killian Hayes enters the NBA super young at a position where the transition to the NBA is the toughest to make. And he struggles early on, and then not even a week into his rookie season, he suffers a career-altering injury. When you factor that into everything, it makes sense as to why he hasn't been the player we thought he would be entering the NBA. Because he isn't the same player he was entering the NBA because of the hip injury. On top of that, taking a hit to his confidence, he also has had to deal with the Pistons kind of giving up on him early. A year after he was drafted, the Pistons got the first overall pick and drafted Cade Cunningham, a big point guard who kind of played the same position as Killian Hayes. It was a question of how Cade and Killian would work together, but the Pistons were going to take Cade first overall. He was the consensus number 1 prospect and was a special draft prospect, one of the best prospects I've ever evaluated. But people thought it could work. Cade could play the 1 through the 3 because he's 6'7", 220, and has the skills to play 3 positions. And he's proven at multiple levels that he can play multiple roles and positions. So while Cade likely would be the lead ball handler, it wasn't like they were forcing Killian out. Killian and Cade could work in theory. Then, in 2022, Killian Hayes isn't good again. And while it was understandable, he's dealing with this career-altering hip injury, the Pistons got the 5th pick. And while many didn't expect it to happen, Jaden Ivey was on the board in the draft, so they took him 5th overall. Another guard who can play the 1 to 2. It was looking like Ivey and Cade were the guards of the future. However, you could still see a world where Hayes is the point guard, Ivey is the 2 guard, and Cade is the small forward because of his size. But then, even though Hayes wasn't good, but he did show progress in my opinion in year 3, 2023 rolls around, and in that draft, they were picking 5th overall again. They got completely screwed in the lottery because they were supposed to get Victor Wembanyama because they were the worst team in the league and they fell to 5. But they got Asar Thompson. So that means Asar is likely the small forward of the future for the team. And that insult to injury, it's not even like the Pistons really believe in Hayes as a backup, because they took Marcus Sasser in the first round to be a long-term backup point guard, and they acquired Monte Morris, one of the better backup guards in the league. So the writing is on the wall for Killian Hayes in Detroit. It's really not as simple as Killian Hayes was always bad, because that isn't the case. He was a really good prospect. However, he had to make a tough transition to the NBA, under circumstances more difficult than even the average rookie. He suffered a career-altering injury 7 games into his rookie season, and the Pistons have gotten chances to get better guards, while Hayes has really struggled to develop. It's not all on Hayes that he hasn't developed because of a lack of effort. He has had to deal with these injuries, including a major one that has changed his trajectory. Really, I think he's a case of bad luck. At the same time, it is kind of on him to show improvement as a shooter. I think he's tried some things, but the results are still the same. And I do understand the Pistons giving up on him because of his lack of scoring. Now, do I think it's over for Killian Hayes? Not necessarily. his time in Detroit is coming to an end very soon. The way that they've been drafting, the way that they've been moving in terms of free agency in the offseason, it's very clear the writing's on the wall. But I do think he will get another chance with an NBA team. He's a former high draft pick, and those guys always get second, even third and fourth chances sometimes. He still is very young, but he has to land in the right situation. I think of the Lakers as a good spot for him because Phil Handy is really good at helping young players develop. Stanley Johnson looked really good on the Lakers because Phil Handy was working with him, and Phil Handy has a great track record of helping young struggling players develop. It's why I'm kind of optimistic about Cam Reddish in LA this season. I think of the Pelicans because Fred Vincent would do wonders for helping develop his jumper. He's the guy that helped fix Lonzo Balls for him. So I think that could be a good spot. And I think of the San Antonio Spurs. You think of their history of international players and having a good track record of developing young guys as well. It's not a guarantee that he does work out in the NBA by any means. I really don't know if he will because the tape is just so rough. The numbers are just as bad. But I wouldn't set the book on him yet. But that's the end of this video. If you made it to this point, thank you so much. Again, haven't already, like, subscribe, hit notification bell, notified whenever I release a video. I make videos about basketball all the time, and liking and subscribing are the two best ways can help me out in the YouTube algorithm and help me reach my goal of 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Let's try and get 100 likes on this video so YouTube will recommend to others. I'd really appreciate if we did all of those things. But let me know what you think about Killian Hayes. Do you think that this is how it was always going to be? Do you think he was going to be better? Where did you have him ranked in the draft? Do you think he can turn it around? Do you think it will work in Detroit or somewhere else? Love your all that in the comment section below. But with that being said, have a nice day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.